Well, I have known Ernie Hamilton for, I would say, 50 or more years. Because when I first met Ernie was a sophomore at Beck High School. Ernie is the most pragmatic person I've ever met in my entire life. Nothing changes his attitude. Even when he was in high school, he was always the leader. He was one that guys had problems, they came to him. I was having some personal problems. And, most of the people I knew, my so-called friends, they just saw like, we're through with you, man. You're not worth our time. But Ernie walked up and said, what's going on? I told him, I said, come here. And he said, look, we can overcome that. Let's just move on from that. Let's don't even give it a second thought. And that was the defining moment in our relationship right there.
Ernie has been a role model for most of my life. I didn't know him for the first 20 years that I knew about him. He was an outstanding student, athlete, and the girls at church talked about him all the time because he was very popular. And then when I went to high school, the teachers talked about him and said, if you're smart, you can be like Ernie Hamilton. And I said, I got to meet this Ernie Hamilton person. When I finally got to meet Ernie Hamilton, and I call him Ernest Hamilton, was at the solicitor's office. He had been there for a number of years as the first African-American investigator at the solicitor's office.
My mother was a domestic worker for a lawyer, and they had a son that was in law school at that time. And my mom would tell me stories on how she would see him studying his law school books and things like that, and as a child. Again, I became investigator in the solicitor's office and worked alongside lawyers, helping prepare cases for court. And eventually people said, you ought to go to law school.
But Ernie was brave. He did what he had to do. He did what he thought was right. Went back to school, came back, and was a wonderful solicitor. And in private practice, he's been a wonderful attorney. Not to mention the Piedmont Athletic Hall of Fame that he started to recognize athletes from historically black high schools here in the Greenville area. It has been a wonderful boost for our community and for those who thought that their accomplishments had not been recognized.
It's a commemoration of Sterling, Washington, Bryson, Beck, and Lincoln. 5 schools that no longer exist, but they're all part of the Greenville County School District. That association brings back old war stories and athletic feats, and it recognizes those athletes as well as the teachers, the administrators of the era that has long since gone by. When Beck was first built, I knew I was going to be going to that school, and I went out for the football team. And then one practice session, the coach came over and said, y'all go over there, help this guy. And I was working, and I would grab 2 bleacher parts and carry them in there. The other guy with me, he would take one at a time. I would take 2, 3. He would take 1. And then at the end of that, the guy said, well, I thank you guys for helping us out. And he gave him, he said, paid the one guy. And then he told me to come over here. He said, man, you worked hard. I'm gonna give you extra because of the effort you put in and what I got from that. And it was just the construction of Beck High School, that if you work hard, you will be rewarded. Most of the time, athletes, they say, well, you need to think more than professional football. All that means when somebody says, I'm gonna be a pro football player, a pro basketball player, all they saying is that I wanna be somebody. So whatever you think you wanna do, if you can be the best there is in that area, seek to do that because there's room for you. So take that path.